Well, this was our first investigation as a whole team, and it was out in Cedar County, just what would that be, west of Tipton up there. It was funny, just the day before we had gotten together as a meeting, I guess you could say, just to see if there was an interest in forming a team and see how interested the guys were into doing this. So Joe Mem and John Mem and myself all got together, and Sean had a prior commitment but wanted me to keep him in contact with what was going on. So we met out at the Coral Ridge Mall, and I had a list of things that we needed to see if we could actually go out and do an investigation. So it was kind of neat to go through, I have this piece of equipment, do you have this, what have we got? And basically from years before, I had a thermometer which reads temperature and things like that, and also an EMF detector, which detects power, if there's a power source by, like a K2 meter, it'll read different energy variances and stuff like that. So, well, Joe and John each had a camera, a still digital camera, which I didn't have at the time, and I had video camera, so we were able to document that. And I think Joe might have had a audio recorder at that time. So, it's like, okay, we got some stuff here, so let's, how serious are we about doing this? And I went through, a list that I had gotten off the internet, Ghost Hunting 101, which is a guy I've been in contact with a few different times, which is a good set of parameters, like how to do an investigation type thing. And one of our main goals, and it still is to today, that we don't investigate anywhere where we're not wanted or we have permission to do. It's not like we're going to break into some place and to do an investigation like maybe other teams have done, which I hope they don't, but it's up to them. But it's just one of those. I like to stay in contact with we like to stay in contact with the local authorities and let them know what's going on. So if something were to arise, we actually have permission and people know what's going on. So that was a positive going into it, and John and Joe had talked about a cemetery that they've gone by, or a few different cemeteries, so we kind of isolated it to one that was sitting on top of a hill and off the road a bit. And I'm like, okay, but I said we need to get permission first, so we end up getting a hold of the Cedar County Sheriff's Department. And at that time it was kind of interesting that, I didn't think they were actually going to give us permission at that given time, but, I found out the number and I gave it to John. I said, John, talk to him and see if he can get something set up for tomorrow, if that's what you really want to do, because we were off work at that given time, so it turned out to be a good thing. So little to known, I went and got something to drink and thought I'd leave him alone for a few minutes. And then when I came back, he was still on the phone, and I was kind of curious about that. I'm like, okay, interesting. So it turned out that the person that he had talked to down at the Sheriff's Department was really into the paranormal and stuff like that, and actually had stories of her own. So John was jotting down information, with the name and everything, and we pretty much got the okay from the Sheriff's Department. So it was like, okay, let's do this, So right after the meeting, I got out to my car, and I'm like, I telephoned Sean, and I'm like, Sean, we're good to go. We're going tomorrow night. He's like, okay. So it was I think it was kind of a shock to him, and I think he had to, he was working at the time till about 2 or 3 in the afternoon doing custodial work and stuff like that, I think. And so we really couldn't get us started until we had picked up Sean. So it was interesting because I said, well, we need to get out there early. We're going to go by the book on this one type thing. So we end up meeting and going out to the place at fairly early, like 4 o'clock or whatever, and sunset was probably about 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, so we had a couple hours. And we kind of saw where the place was, and we kind of got a good idea where we were at too, so it was good in that respect. So we kind of cased out the cemetery, just looking for different potholes and where the entrance was and stuff like that. So when it got dark out, we would have a good idea of where we were at, so make sure we didn't trip over things and headstones, whatnot, and different things like that. So it was kind of neat seeing all the different headstones that were out there and seeing where the road was and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think we might have had a few flashlights. I think that was just like one of those, I think we have everything. I hope we have a flashlight. And I think John actually did have a flashlight, so I think we were good to go there. So, after casing out the cemetery, we went back down to the cars, and kind of loaded up a little bit, got something to drink and something to eat, whatnot, just kind of waiting for it to get to sunset and see how things would go. And we had 2 different cameras at that time. We had a still camera that we'd set up in different places and times, and we actually had one that Sean was carrying around to document things. So he would, switch off between, following Joe around and following John around and myself around. And it wasn't a huge cemetery, but it was a decent size enough that we could, kind of spread out a little bit. Because Joe had the back part of the cemetery to where he kind of felt it was kind of creepy back there. So he kind of took around back there and started taking pictures, and John and I were kind of more towards the front of it, where a plot that kind of interested us. And Sean had an experience earlier right by this tree, and so that was really where we kind of focused our investigation.
I was standing right here when it happened, and I was walking this way towards the spot following Greg and John, and I stopped for no apparent reason. And at first I looked up, and I heard something, not even paying attention. I just kind of glided my way over, which is really ridiculous because for me, it's almost impossible for me to get caught by anything. But it caught me and glided me over, and then I let loose, or whatever it was, and then I had Joe come over to take a picture, and his battery died right here.
I didn't know how good our equipment would do as far as, we just didn't know how our equipment would actually work, I guess you could say, because we're taking pictures to see what we could get, and John and Joe ended up taking a lot of good different pictures, and all I had was, my thermometer and my K2 type meter. So, my K2 meter really wasn't doing a whole lot, but, I was shooting my thermometer, kind of getting a base reading. It's probably not a good thing to have outside, but, I used it to what I thought we could use it for, It was one of those, I think looking back on it now, that it was probably an inappropriate tool because sure the temperature's going to be going down because it's at night and the wind's going to be blowing, and who really knows how this piece of equipment is going to work in a paranormal investigation. So I think we end up making it work to our advantage a little bit. There were a few different times I was getting some really wacky readings, and I'd tell John, because he was fairly close, I'm like, John, I'm getting a really weird reading up in this tree, and snap a few shots and see what's going on here, and he would take a few snapshots, and then we would look back upon it, and it's like, that's kind of interesting. And
And you see when you go normal here, it's a 50. But if you just go up like 2 inches, 33.
Oh my God.
And it's constant like that. It just jumps all over. 36, 38. But down at eye level, it's 50. But you just go up just a little bit, it's up to the 36. And the higher you get, it goes back up again. So it's just right there. That's why I was wondering if you could maybe get some pictures or something up in there. He's not showing up in
Right
there.
on the edge of the tree limb there.
Yeah, exactly.
John had gotten a lot of interesting shots that night, and Joe too. And I don't know if we had really gotten a lot of audio out of that. Nothing that really Joe had actually come on and said, hey, I think something's going on there. Just because I think, we've never really tested things out before, So it made it kind of a hit and miss type thing, So I think the way the audio had picked up, it picked up like long range. I mean, so you could hear a car coming from miles away down on a road that maybe, I don't know, half a mile away. So it's like, okay, and you could hear planes going overhead and different things like that. So it's like, okay, not exactly what we were looking for. And plus we didn't know what we were really looking for anyway, because we'd watched different shows, Ghost Hunters and whatnot. We'd seen kind of how it's done. So, we're new to this and we're excited and we're scared and I don't know necessarily scared, but it's just kind of that feeling, just kind of what's going to happen type thing. So it was interesting to get together a few days later once I had looked at the video from different things that we'd had and just seeing what Joe's pictures, just kind of documenting that and John's pictures, and it was really interesting to find different things out. And so we always kind of compared as like, is this an orb or is that a moth, or we didn't see a lot of bugs out that night because it was kind of a cooler night.
Found a whole bunch of orbs that we weren't expecting. This is a good example. There's motion from right to left. Rather large orb, kind of purplish in color. And the next picture, within seconds, it's gone. I took a lot of these just to make sure that it's not something on the lens, something distorted. Here's another one. We got Greg and the team over here. And
Where are we at? Oh, down there in the corner,
yeah,
huh?
and up here we got a light orb up here and a couple possible little bright spots as well.
Yeah.
And there was activity sighted. Now here, Sean and Greg are both getting all these unbelievable temperature fluctuations in this tree. They're scanning it right now, and up here we've got several orbs visible. I've since enhanced many of these pictures beyond this, and even more show up.
Here's one that's got several spots working all over. When you zoom in and look, there's more substance to some of these. That one and this one over here and that one there. It's just kind of a really funny one that I got. Some of them had a few, but nothing. Here's another nice, brilliant one at the bottom. Kind of little, real good ball of energy down there. But anyhow, all in all, really seemed like we got a lot more than we expected as far as the possible orbs go. And
But I did find, a little bit of my own evidence, which was kind of strange because I was at the particular spot where Sean was at, where he had experienced activity during the day, 3 or 4 hours earlier. And I had seen something fly by, and I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
Yes, this is the best one right here. Do you see that?
I saw it.
This is in slow motion here.
Oh, look at this.
Right there, yeah.
And it's and it kind of hits me in the back, and it kind of gets smaller and goes off.
Huh.
And another clip that I had was of my thermometer, because you could see something go right by the thermometer, and it changed the temperature a few degrees. So I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting, because Sean had been doing the camera work on this, and he just had zoomed in on that. So it was kind of neat later on to show them what I had come up with.
Wow, that's crazy.
Here's another one. This one's really dark. Let's see if you can see it, like over my white hand going up.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. Then I slowed it down too. Even though it's not really totally white or anything, you can kind of see the blackness go through it.
We didn't have any bugs at all that night either.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wow. There's somebody looking at his video closely.
And I also had like one clip, because at the very end, when the when I had the thermometer in my hand and I had caught something going by it, I was trying to communicate with this entity, I guess you could say, or spirit, whatnot. That I was trying to get it to come closer, because I was getting, you know, just varied readings on my thermometer, and we had heard a howling off to the distance, and it just kind of like, wait a minute, what was that? And it's kind of like, oh, it's just coyotes or whatever. And we're like, I was kind of thinking, it's like, yep, that's about time to wrap it up. It's, oh, right at midnight, huh? It's kind of like right on time, I guess you could say, right? But so it was a real interesting type night, and I was kind of surprised we were out there. Probably that's the longest we've ever been out on well, I guess a cemetery investigation before, you know, getting out there before dawn and kind of scoping things out, and being out there till just about midnight or so. So it was really interesting, you know. So we ended up loading up into Sean came with me in the van, and we had taken off, and we'd followed Joe and John in their car, and we had pulled off into a neighboring town there. You know, we just kind of like, okay, we got the camera out, we're like, dude, you know, what was going on? I mean, this is kind of crazy, you know. I think we had a lot to say at that time. It's like, holy cow, I couldn't believe, you know, that this was happening. And you know, Joe was telling me about his experiences, like, holy cow, you know, I was back there and I kept hearing things in the trees and stuff, and it was really weird to see a lot of our activity pick up, you know, when the wind started blowing in and stuff, because it was kind of calm, but then the wind started picking up and making things a lot colder, and it was kind of weird. Then it would subside, and then, you know, it was just a really neat experience for everybody, I think, there, because you know, it was our first time out. You know, we were excited. We were like, holy cow, you know, we actually did this, and it was cool, and everybody had a story, and the excitement was so great. And that was our first investigation into the paranormal as a team.
I can see that thing glowing after dark.
Oh, wow, that must be like dried up mold.
That is.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's dried up mold.
That's the way. Yeah, it's a real breeze.
And you see when you go normal here, it's a 50. But if you just go up like 2 inches, 33.
Oh my God.
This area right here, I just get a feeling in this area where this creepy tree is, around this bush and everything. If there's any one area in here that kind of creeps me out, it seems to be this area right here.
3, 5, 7, 9, 6, 1, 2, 2, 5, 3, 5, 8, 13, 16, 20, 4, 20, 15, 7, 3, 12, 17, 2, 6, 3, 1, 4, 8, 10. This is ridiculous. This is jumping all over the place.
You've seen everything.
What do I think?
What do you think? Is there something going on there?
You know, I don't think we can come out and say it's haunted. Look at this, it's haunted. But I think what we got is something. There's a lot of energy there. You know, if orbs are balls of energy, there's a lot of energy out there. You know, whether it's whether or not you know, they're the souls floating out there remains to be seen. But
We've got a lot of unexplained, right?
we do
Would
have
you
a lot of
say?
unexplained. Last night I took my camera and just took some random shots out in the dark to see if I'd get some orbs, and I must have taken 7 or 8 photos in a row without an orb in them anywhere. And that was just right out here outside the house. So I didn't get 7 in a row out there at the cemetery. So there's at least a lot of energy surrounding those areas, and I believe that even the trees can have some energy. I believe that.
Yeah,
So
that was amazing unto itself. And Sean, you've seen the video, seen pictures. What's your analysis?
We have to say I really think there's something there, and there's a lot going on.
I mean, you had that experience at
Yeah, I mean,
8 o'clock or 8:30.
Yeah, early in the day. I mean, when we first showed up, it just grabbed me and made me just stop there, and it just like led me down. And I really think there's something out, there's something out there. We got to look a little harder. I
True.
think it's there.
True. John, any last words? What do you think?
Well, our second trip out there convinced me that something's definitely happening at this one cemetery. I'm anxious to go to some different ones and see if, it might be as commonplace as, fireflies at night for all we know. Down the line, I think I want to seek some scientific advice, some spectral analysis or whatever on these lights to see if they're actually, physical or what's going on, because I'm still kind of lost for words what was going on there. Never a fan of orbs, and it's all we're getting, so we'll see in the future, but man, it's pretty crazy.
That it is.
Go.
And yeah. Well, I don't know. It's. I was surprised at the pictures that they took, and actually something showed up, and it was kind of neat seeing it actually out there and everything. And knowing Sean had that experience early in the beginning, I'm like, you figure it's daylight, what's really going to happen type thing. So it makes you kind of wonder, but it seems like we were just kind of drawn to that tree for some reason, and I just felt like there was something there, and I wanted to be able to go beyond than saying it's like, yeah, it's a temperature of 20 or whatever, but I was hoping. And then until the coyotes showed up, I think we were actually getting somewhere, and then it just kind of diminished from there. But it just seems like there is something going on there. And just looking at some of John's pictures where there was actually orbs like right above us, so it was like, yeah, we were onto something and we knew it was there. So that was kind of neat in that respect. So it'll be interesting going on to the next investigation, and some of the way some of that video turned out too. I was kind of amazed at that. So I guess we could just leave it as, I think there is something going on there, and we're just looking forward to the next investigation to see what we learned from this one, to see if it can help us in the next one along the way. So I think that's cool.